Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the All Surface Show. I am one of two co hosts here, David E.J. Berger. A lot of people know me. Well, if you're tuning in here, you might know me from Match Point Number 9, a Tennis Best podcast, one of our podcasts we have on the All Surface Media shingle that me and my co host here, Mr. Ace Previews himself, who runs a fabulous Discord for tennis betting. Steve, welcome in from Australia.
Yeah, it's starting to get warm down here. Means the tennis must be around the corner. Just got a couple of weeks of not a lot of tennis to get through first, and then it'll be all systems go. Just around, I think the tennis season starts in the new year this year instead of just before in late December. So we're nearly there.
Yeah, well, I typically always lament when the holiday season is over, but now Steve, sorry. But now, Steve, with the tennis calendar right on the other side as a big tennis person, it's like get out of here, Christmas. Let's get to the Australian swing.
Yeah, that's going to be a busy start to the year, but look, we're getting some reps in now in December, and we'll be good to go. We'll blink and we'll be in Indian Wells before we know it. So we need to make the most of the little break that we have before things really ramp up on the other side of the Christmas break.
All right. Well, this is the All Surface Show, and I thought it would be good to talk about a player who shined on all surfaces. Actually, the one surface he didn't shine on, Steve, was the one he had traditionally been a mainstay on, his preferred surface, if you will. And, most shows, Steve, that are launching on YouTube that want to build an audience, especially in the tennis space, you talk about Yannick Sinner, you talk about Carlitos Alcaraz. No, I say no, Steve. We got to talk about Jaume Munar, the Spaniard, the 28-year-old Spaniard who just recently got married. Congratulations to him. I think of this guy as a first-team lunch pail guy. This guy always shows up to work, so I want to give him some love on this podcast, especially a guy who encompasses the all-surface aesthetic. And right now they're launching the Spotify Wraps. Your year that was. I thought it would be fun to do a wrap for Jaume Munar, his 2025, his best season so far. And while those guys, the new two, the top 10, they've been the main characters on tour. I feel like Jaume Munar has been a strong character actor all season long. He comes in, he steals a scene. And I'm excited to get into it, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a good one to start with talking about here. Do you want to kick things off with what your thoughts are? Obviously, as you said, he's had a big year in terms of, he's been able to move, was it ranking from the 60s to the 30s, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you think about, the types of players and the consistency and level you need to be able to produce, at the higher ATP tournaments and Grand Slam tournaments. But what is it about him that stood out to you this year?
Well, you mentioned his rank. He has a current rank of 36. That is his highest rank so far. And he had his most wins as well. He has 31 wins this season on the tour. That's his most by far. It's a breakout year for him. And I think what stood out to me was, he popped out right from the jump in that first Hong Kong tournament, making the semifinals, beating David Fokina, beating Lorenzo Musetti en route to that semifinal. He does lose in 3 to the eventual Hong Kong champion, Alex Muller, the Frenchman, who also had a pretty solid 2025 as well. And then he parlays that into a nice opening round match in which, Casper Ruud was I won't say he's on the ropes, but I think another thing about Munar's year is 3 or 4 slams. He had a memorable slam match, and this one went to 5 sets. Went to 5 sets against Casper in Australia, and I think a good loss actually. if you can say such a thing, Steve.
Yeah, and I think the key thing with that match too was I'm fairly certain now that we're talking about it that it was played with the roof closed on one of the main courts. And yeah, I think for me it was one of those ones where you kind of look at the start of the season, you look at Hong Kong, and you sit there and you go, oh, first tournament up, still getting a feel for all the players and where they're at in terms of their game. But then, yeah, he turns up, takes on then the number 6 seed in the first round of a Grand Slam, and takes him to 5 sets in an indoor hard court, which, if you were to pick all the surfaces, rank the surfaces and conditions for Munar, I don't think that would have been near the top in terms of his preference. But yeah, I think those performances, even though you get to the other side of the Australian Open and you're 3 wins and 2 losses, I think it was certainly a strong position for him, in terms of kicking off. And then Dallas, which is, also then similar conditions again, being able to take Casper to a 3rd set tiebreak. So I feel like that really set the tone for him. But also, when you think about it, it probably gives him a lot of opportunity here to be able to kind of make a little bit more of a jump up the rankings here. He can start the year strongly.
In February, Steve, that's a time of year when guys like Munar, who are a little bit further down the ranks, they can really rise up, take advantage of watered down draws. He does that here in Dallas, a 500 event this year, indoors. And in fact, the speed was slowed down a bit compared to years past, which he took to his advantage. He picks up a win against Ben Shelton. So now already by this point in his season, he's got wins against Fokina, Musetti, Ben Shelton, and we're not even the Golden Swing. So he was off to a great start. He does end up losing in the semifinals to Casper Ruud. A tough one, though. Another match that went all the way to the end with Casper, who goes down in the final to Shapovalov. But I think another eye-opening campaign from the Spaniard here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that point there where you can sit there and look and go that there's probably a mixture there of, won't he kind of make the leap? That you see that ranking, and for those who are watching on YouTube, up on the screen, got the scores there from the start of the year. That ranking just kind of floating, I think, in that kind of 50 range. Didn't drop too far out, didn't drop too far back. But I think, yeah, it's for someone who I guess in the past you'd probably think more so as a clay type, grinding type style. You look at the results through there up until, even Roland Garros there, clay wasn't a particularly successful little period for him. That being said, there's some pretty decent players there that got a better of him as well. So it wasn't like he was losing a lot of uncharacteristic matches. Even the one you could probably say now that against Double V there probably doesn't look so bad, maybe with the way that he's finished off the year as well, and now sits, I think, just on the cusp or a little bit higher than Munar in the rankings.
Yeah, it does have a pretty poor Rio de Janeiro, loses to Jaume Feria, who at that time, though, that wasn't really a bad loss. Faria does pick up an injury, and I don't think he ever quite recovered his season from that moment. But at that time, the Portuguese had a really nice Australian swing himself. So not an awful loss. It does go out in 3 to Kei Nishikori. Nishikori really was not that great this year. So in the end, I think you can paint that with the bad loss brush. But look in Miami, then, Steve. Now we got to win against Daniil Medvedev for Munar. I mean, this isn't undertone. I'm glad we're kind of doing this because now I'm actually getting kind of pumped up talking about this. Med, obviously a lot of guys beat him this year. This wasn't the best year for Daniil Medvedev. But, from a betting perspective, another big dog win. From a surprise perspective, I don't think anyone had Munar taking down Medvedev here. And these are all guys who were top 20 players that he has bested. He's got about five of those wins so far before we even hit the clay counter.
And yeah, so you're going up to that point there of Miami, so losing to Monfils in a third set tiebreak, and you look up through that first kind of 3 months of the year. So Hong Kong semi-final where he won the first set and was in a second set tiebreak. So there was a tiebreak where he could have gone on to win, were he to win that set. Lost in 5 to Casper Ruud. Lost to Ruud then in a third set tiebreak in Dallas. As well in there, he lost to Nishikori at Indian Wells in the first round in a third set tiebreak. And then he's lost to Monfils in a third set tiebreak. So he's got that mixture of, he's been winning well, but also the losses for the most part have been pretty tight. They've either been, in 3 sets, all of them, or it's the third set tiebreak even for a large portion of them as well.
As we mentioned, his clay season not that great. He does have a bright spot in Rome. Took advantage of beating Tomas Barrios Vera, who is a bit of a challenger guy. A tricky opponent on his day, though. I think that was a fine win in Rome. Beats Ben Shelton, nice win. Korda, whatever win. Korda on clay. And then, of course, loses in the round of 16 to Ruud once again. Man, just keeps going up against Ruud. It's tough when you keep playing the guy who has your number.
Then back up again the week after in Geneva, again loses in a third set tiebreak. So it's a bit of a what might have been as well, I guess, when you look at his rankings, in terms of being able to convert some of these losses into wins.
Now, grass has actually been his worst surface his entire career, and I'm not going to say he made a leap this year, but he certainly made some strides with his. I thought one of the most well, actually, before we even get there, let's go to his. I mentioned the 3 or 4 slams memorable. Let me change my. So tennis.com highlighted his match against Artur Fils at Roland Garros, a 5-setter. The Fils comes out on top, but this guy's playing popcorn matches throughout 2025, and we're not the only ones that took notice. Got your shirtless Fils there for the ladies.
And I think with that as well, there was one kind of question mark in terms of what could have made it a better year. It was probably winning. There's 2 matches that come to mind. There's this one where Arthur was injured, and I'm pretty sure was when you look at the 3rd and 4th sets, Munar was able to win the 3rd set 6-2 and the 4th set 6-love, and then I'm pretty sure had a fair chunk of either break points or was consistently pushing Arthur on serve there. So that's probably a missed opportunity, you would say, for Munar. And then you could probably also, not to fast forward too much, but was it Shanghai against Novak when he was injured as well? Another deciding set loss, which has become somewhat familiar for Munar. But yeah, I think there's probably some opportunities there that were maybe missed. Here we go, up on the screen there as well, that Munar did all the work to try and push his way along in that 5th set and then gets broken serving to stay in it at 4-5.
Quite the year for Artur Fils, which John and I covered on the Match Point show. All right. I talked about his grass season a little bit, and Steve, this is a match that I know you remember because you tipped it, and I think it was one of the more surprising results as Bublik had come in on fire. He bests Bublik in the opening round of Wimbledon in 5 sets, no less, and he was on the ropes. I mean, he really, in all honesty, maybe should have lost, but weathers the storm. Sure. Go ahead.
Bublik served for it in the 4th set as well. Before that tiebreak, I'm pretty sure it was at 5-4 serving, I think, and they even went to juice, I think, that game as well. So very, very fine margins. And this is in that kind of period where they say, you look at Bublik's ranking there. He's sitting at 31 in the world, and he was in the ATP finals question or contention in the back end of the year. So probably at that start of that strong run for Bublik. But I think the big thing when you look at this, and I guess that the message you kind of want to look through with him is he is the type of player that I think, or for me, when I'm watching tennis, or say I'm going to the Australian Open next month, I would like to go and watch a player like Munar because as you said, kind of off the top, what you're going to get from him. You're going to get effort from point one right through until the chair umpire says game, set, match. You look at his losses. So he lost 29 times in the last year, and only 13 of those have been in straight sets. So he's either, when you look across that, there's either 16 times he's taken a set, and 31 times he's won, and there's only been 13 occasions where he's been knocked out in straight sets, and some of those are against some pretty handy players. So I think it's effort and consistency, and that's where he comes into his own, I think, against a player like Alexander Bublik, who can be a little bit up and down in terms of his level and how he manages moments. And he'll go for the big serve, he'll try and take things on, but with that can sometimes come double faults. And when you've got someone consistently down the other end, making, not necessarily hitting winners, but extending points by a shot or two, and if he does that every a couple of times a game, a 2.5 hour match becomes a 3.5 hour match very, very quickly, and he becomes a very tough person that you have to beat. He's not going to beat himself all that often.
Now you're wondering how he made this leap. I think there's one clear example, and that is the reason why, rather, and that is the work he put in his service game. In 2025, he increased his hold percentage by 7% versus 2024, and that's across more matches, 14 more matches, so an even bigger sample size than the prior year. With that leap, he got his first serve in percentage up nearly a full 4%, and 2% for his second serve percentage as well. I mean, it was his first serve. I don't want to say it was necessarily a quote unquote weapon, but it was not a liability like years past.
Yeah. And I think that's that ability to, say if you're winning over 70% of your first serves and you're putting nearly 2/3 of your first serves into play, it's a pretty good starting point for anyone, I think, and particularly with that kind of stat across all surfaces as well. And look, the stats for the tour level season that we have up on the screen, it just shows, I guess, the fine margins that come at the top of the game where we're talking about him making this big leap. In terms of total points won, he's only gone up by 0.8% across the course of the season, but translates to some pretty impressive results. And as I said, he's on the cusp of being seeded at the Australian Open, and he doesn't have, he didn't make a final this year. So it's about that kind of consistency in terms of being able to turn up each week and, put together some quarterfinal appearances and put together some, in large tournaments, making it to, rounds of 16 and quarterfinals, and the occasional semi-final. And that pretty much holds you in good stead, as we saw here. We'll obviously have to defend that semi-final from Hong Kong first up, but I think from memory, he's playing in the United Cup this month. So he's playing against Taylor Fritz and Sebastian Baez in the group stage of the United Cup. So good opportunity there for him to maybe defend a decent chunk of those points.
I think all the tennis caught up with him during the hard court summer.
Yep.
At that point, he had a lot of action under his legs, but he is able to take that little breath between Winston-Salem, which is, he did play that to get, some form. He's able to take advantage of that form he found, rather, at Winston-Salem. And he gets to the round of 16 of the U.S. Open, which at the start of 2025, would you have had Jaume Munar in your round of 16 of the U.S. Open? I think it's highly unlikely. And I believe he was compromised in the end, but did play it out. And then, Steve, I mean, he has a couple more good runs, a nice round of 16 appearance, and pushes Novak Djokovic in Shanghai. And then, obviously, indoors, goes on, gets a nice retirement from Felix. That helps. but has a semifinal run in Basel, and then stumbles early on against Medvedev in a rematch. But man, I just thought he was really impressive all season long. And I was talking about this on Match Point about another player, but this tour, people love the young guns, the prospects, the phenoms, but there's a lot of guys who probably aren't going to peak until about 28 years old, like Jaume Munar. And why I like talking about him is give him some shine for having a great season, because it's obvious he's a professional and puts in the work.
Absolutely, and I think even the Davis Cup results, I think, to finish off, was able to beat Lehečka in straight sets, and then lose it to Zverev in 2 tie breaks, and then Kaboli against the crowd as well. Took the first set 6-1 and then lost it 6-7, 5-7. So again, it's just a bit of that kind of story. Is for the most part, it's pretty strong in terms of effort and output. And you probably, if you were to look at all of those results across the course of the season, the outlier there is probably the one to Medvedev in Paris. But I'd say Medvedev, certainly peaked towards the back end of the year, after making some changes. And I don't think that's something that I really hold against Munar in any way, shape, or form when you look at the larger body of work he was able to produce.
Agreed. What a great run. And I think that forecasting is 2026 to conclude this segment. I feel like there's a chance for some regression, not necessarily because of his game, but another year with more players rising up could get trickier. But I do think that he has the capability to find spaces in the calendar to remain a top 50 player.
I think the thing for him is, I feel like the reasonable target for him is to be seeded for Roland Garros. I think when you look at where he's sitting now, given he's got to defend some points in like the Hong Kong points, I'd say it'd be a surprise if he was a seed at the Australian Open. But when you look at it, if he can, I said he's got first round points to defend at the Australian Open. So if you can get a win at the United Cup and get enough points, I think, in Australia to be able to cover off his Dallas semi-final as well, or close to, I think that puts him in a pretty good spot to be able to outperform himself between then and Roland Garros from this year. And then it's about that kind of being able to capitalize on, being seeded in those type of tournaments. You'd put him, against a fair portion of unseeded players, you'd hold him in a pretty good position, I think, on clay over 5 sets. So I think that's probably the thing for him, is that I could see him being top 30 at Garros. But it's about that ability to be able to kind of sustain that level, knowing that, everyone else is going to be improving as well. No one's standing still at the moment. So it's going to be a big test for him. But I think, as you said, half the battle sometimes for players is effort. And at least, with him, he's giving max effort regardless of the outcome.
Exactly. Jaume Munar, we see you, buddy. Okay, Steve, right now, there's actually some tennis happening as we record. It actually might be wrapping up in Charlotte. It's one of the exhibitions that are happening this month. It's the Charlotte Invitational. Taylor Fritz is taking on Francis Tiafoe. Taylor Fritz got some social media fun over the last couple of days with looked like he had a great time in Tokyo. And I didn't really get into this whole Maldives situation with people in their off seasons, and I have no comment on that. I actually don't even know what people were talking about with that. But the exhibitions, people are back on court. I just found it weird with people commenting on the Maldives. Like, can't these guys do what they want without comment? What a time to be alive. And we're going to comment more on these exhibitions, which I go both ways on this because it's a fair amount, Steve. And you know, the easy thing is to be like, these guys complain about how long the tour is, and then they play these exhibitions. It at least on its surface seems hypocritical. but it does seem like a great way to either raise money for charity or get some cash, or I think the really messed up ones are, at least like the Atlanta Cup, the Garden Cup. Those are communal events. A couple years ago, Rude and Nadal were like going on basically a corporate exhibition tour in South America. that you can maybe poke a few more holes in. But yeah, we have the Atlanta Cup coming up. The Charlotte one is coming up. The Garden Cup, which is Madison Square Garden, that I believe that one will be on Tennis Channel. What do you think about these December exhibitions, Steve?
It's a tricky one. I can understand why the players do it, and I can understand the money and everything that comes with it. But Taylor Fritz this year, I think it was during the North American Hardcourt Swing, was talking about how insane the tennis schedule, and yet here he is in December playing and coming back from his time off to play. Really, like, at the end of the day, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, like I have no issue with it whatsoever, but also don't complain the other way. Like, I'm also sure that there are probably some other players who'd love to play this kind of stuff, but fair play to them for having the opportunity. But the other way is, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to play these things, then maybe when you get asked the question during the year about is the season too long, maybe come up with a slightly better answer that isn't going to look a bit contradictory and hypocritical when the time comes, when you step out on court in December in Charlotte to play Francis Tiafoe. Like, it's
flying back from your
it's
your vacation.
Yeah. Like, this isn't the ATP's fault. Like, they're not the ones. I would actually argue, if anything, the ATP did a really good job this year. For what we've seen is a big shift this year in terms of the cutoff times for the Australian Open main draw. And you get a really good example of that between the men's and the women's right now. So the men's, for example, it was a couple of weeks ago, the cutoff was, I think it was before like the Playford Challenger week or something. It was at least 2 to 3 weeks ago. So at that point in time, players knew whether they were going to be in the Australian Open main draw or not. Yes, there are more Challenger tournaments for people to kind of build up ranking points and everything. That's great. But you see, there are players this time of year who are playing to lock in a main draw spot because it is quite lucrative from a financial perspective and a ranking perspective. The women's, you have a look this week in, Colombia, Dubai, and France, and you look at the live rankings at the moment and see how active the players ranked 100 through kind of 115 are in terms of trying to get in, because their cutoff is December 8th. So I actually think the men's side have done a good job in terms of trying to protect, I think, the top players, to not have them push through to play these kind of challenges to lock in, main draw Australian Open status. At the same time, if you're going to do that, don't then fill up that period with a whole bunch of exhibitions, I would have thought, if you're going to be kind of trying to be the voice of reason for the tour on behalf of everyone. I think that's the other thing we need to remember, is that there are a lot of people who speak as if they're speaking generally for everyone, when I'm pretty sure tennis is one of the more self-serving populations, no pun intended, out of all of the top level sports. Like, they're talking from their own kind of pocket and their own wallets in terms of these things. And as I said, yes, you might not be able to play as much during the year, and it might affect your ability to generate money from the bonus pool or whatever it is. But at the same point, you know, there are ways that you can reduce your schedule. And I would say the big thing I'm probably going to predict, or not a prediction, but as you up on the screen here, we've got Alex de Minaur playing UTS in December after being pretty vocal, I think, about how busy the tennis tour is, and him playing, was it the Davis Cup qualifiers and those sort of things? I don't think he's playing Davis Cup this year. So was it straight after the Australian Open? I think Australia's got an away in Colombia, and I'm pretty sure Leighton Hewitt might end up having to play his son there based on, you know, potential agreement, I think, for people to play away in Colombia in that pocket of the draw before, you know, going back to North America.
Yeah, this weekend we got the UTS London final, which is a lot of money on the line for the players that play that, and it is something. It's more than an exhibition. It's I'll, having actually been to UTS, I will defend it, I guess, a little bit. I didn't even know about this one. A Racket at the Rock in New Jersey, Alcaraz, Tiafoe, Anisimova, and Pegula. That's taking place this weekend at the Prudential Center. Interesting one. This one looks ridiculous. I don't know if you've seen the. Let me see if I can find it. But the court for the Miami one with Alcaraz taking on Fonseca. It's inside the Miami Marlins facility or stadium, and let me see if I can find it. But yeah, here it is. So I gotta bring this up. Oh, how do I do that? Oh yeah, share this tab instead. So this is what it allegedly looks like. Now, I joked that this looks like a typical Marlins game.
Oh man.
I mean, I get trying to service the Miami area who loves its tennis, obviously with the Miami Open, and bringing in Fonseca, who, if you can recall from when the Miami Open was happening, he was a crowd drawer. Now, obviously, all the South American players, they do bring the people out in Miami, but he in particular was the show there until he was upended by de Minaur. But yeah, that looks ridiculous. What else we got? Oh yeah, the Garden Cup one.
Nice intimate arena, isn't it? Like everyone's going to be up nice and close to the tennis. It's great.
The Garden Cup makes sense to me. It's Madison Square Garden. You know, we just had the U.S. Open, which is only gaining more in popularity, especially within the city of New York. So that one makes sense to me. This one doesn't make sense to me, traveling India for these players. This seems like some cash grabs for these two India events.
Matches have a 25-point format. Well, that sounds great.
I don't know if you know this, but it makes tennis more exciting and accessible to Indian audiences because is it more akin to cricket scoring? Is that the reason why?
Oh man, I do understand. Like there is a bit of tennis through like the World Tennis League, and you do see players.
Okay, yeah, that has some history behind it.
Yeah, but then you think about it as like, why wouldn't you have some of the players maybe from the World Tennis League be there the week before to do the other aspect? But that's all right. But look, as I said, you're working your way through here. Oh, and then we've got Arena Sabalenka playing an influencer.
Is that a subtle shot at your countrymen?
No, never. No, I think this is the thing. So, like, if you're going to play this kind of battle of the sexes type thing, and you're saying it's a men's ranked player against a women's ranked player, or have a male that has a ranking. It's not ranked at the moment.
Well, no, I think so. The Battle of the Sexes, I think, is obviously the most egregious of the exhibitions happening so far. One, because obviously it has a lot of historical context surrounded with that title of a match. And a lot of historical significance, really. And this seems like a hit and a giggle. As
I
they
just
say.
don't know what's meant. Like, what? Fast forward to December 29 when we do a show. Like, I'm trying to figure out what, like you work through these things and you go back up to those matches, the matches in India, and it's talking about like building a presence of tennis in India, and that's fantastic. And I'm happy to, I actually like that and happy to get behind that, make it more exciting and accessible. Fantastic. I'm just trying to figure out what the value add is for Sabalenka Kyrgios.
Oh no, the value is I believe it's called sports washing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a pure entertainment, gaming, gambling, money grab, obviously, from the players involved as well.
This is the thing. I'm a big, and like you kind of scroll back up. Kyrgios, I think, is listed in a few of these things. He is even playing. Was he in the Indian World Tennis League? Yeah. Like, I think it's the thing. Like, you sit there and you look at it, like, it's great. It's great for him to put his hand up for all of these things, but then he's actually still got to play. Like, I would love to see him back at the top level.
Of course.
Like, I think that's the thing. Like, we'd love to see that. However, we can, shape it. But I'd love to see it, in Adelaide in the lead-up tournament to the Australian Open. You want to see it kind of in more, as a player, watching him as a player who, when the lights shine brightest, he's going to, you're probably going to get the best out of him. And you think about some of those matches at Grand Slam level against, Novak and Nadal and sort of things. I don't know. I just see that against Sabalenka. I see that kind of things. I just don't like. It doesn't grab me the same way. It maybe does grab a lot of people, and fair play if it does. But I feel like for him, there needs to be something pretty significant on the line, or it just becomes a giggle very, very quickly. And I just don't know if, as I said, like when you compare it to some of the other exhibitions, I just don't know where the value add is outside of maybe, a couple of Instagram posts, potentially. I'm adding probably a significant amount of money into their bank accounts, but again, it's trying to figure out like it's value to them, but is it a value add elsewhere?
Yeah, we shall see on that one. All right, well, I think that's a good place to end for now. We got a good about 40 minutes in almost. A couple of topics we dug our teeth into. Any final thoughts, Steve?
I'm looking forward to our next show when we can put it out to anyone who's watching, who we should cover off next. If we're going to talk about a couple more players kind of in the lead up across December.
Yeah.
Obviously, as all good tennis shows, we've started with Munar. And yeah, where will we head next? I think that's probably the key thing as we edge towards the holiday season.
Yeah, if you enjoyed our all surface wrapped of the 2025 season for Jaume Munar, please comment below who you would like us to talk about on the next episode. We are getting reps in while the eyes, maybe not so much on tennis as I stumbled along, maybe even called Steve the wrong name at one point. We're trying to get better at this, folks. Go ahead.
And we did talk about it, I think, at the end of the last show, but there are steps in progress for me to be able to get an LED sign. I think we were talking about I need to get rid of this background. So watch this space. Hopefully in the next month or two, I'll have something a bit more substantial behind me besides a
yeah, well, you can only go like I say this last. You can only go two ways. You got to go the bookcase with the sports. How many bobbleheads do you have, Steve?
I have a few bobbleheads, and I do have a case. And I'm wondering if maybe I can put the sign at the top of the case and really just double down. That's my thought.
There you go. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your holiday parties. Until next time, see you in the court.